Hello, everybody. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, so this is from back in 1982, so it's a little old, but I was working for a company named Ween United, W-E-A-N, for Jack Ween, who was a Youngstown person, and he bought up United Engineering and Foundry here in Pittsburgh, became Ween United. Anyway, that's the company that I went to work for out of college. And I was in the electrical department. One of the projects that I worked on was a couple of mills for China Steel Corporation. And after working on that for a year and a half or a couple of years on the engineering and development, I ended up going with the other people who were following it into the field. So I knew it was coming, wasn't sure exactly when it was going to be, but it turned out to be from about February, and it was going to be about 4 months. So we had just gotten married in April of the previous year, and we were not sure when to start a family. We were thinking maybe when we got back from Taiwan, which we already saw on the horizon. But one of the other people that I worked in the field in Chicago with, in the meantime, said, you know, the time's never going to be right. You should just go ahead and do it if that's what you want. So anyway, we took his advice, and so when we went on this, Millie was pregnant and with Katie, our first kid, and Katie was born in July. So you know, it was we wouldn't have wanted to leave much later than May, because you get to a point where they won't let you on the plane if you're too close. So anyway, we headed to Taiwan, and we did. Let's see. So just a little bit of background, and this is just to let you know what's coming. I've divided the trip into chapters of different particular activities during the 4 months, and there are about 250 slides. I'm expecting it to take like an hour and 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. 40 minutes if I give it 10 seconds a slide. So anyway, so a little bit of history. This is because I'm recognizing that Jack has a difficulty calling Taiwan anything other than Formosa, so I wanted to let people know a little bit about this. The first indigenous people about 6,000 years ago. Portuguese sailors were the ones to which the name Formosa is attributed. Ilha Formosa Island, beautiful island, and it stuck reasonably well. The island was annexed by the Qing dynasty in 1683, and they ended up having to cede it to Japan because of the Japanese strength in the area. In 1895, the people on the island didn't like that idea, and so they tried to secede and establish independence, an effort that lasted about 5 months, and then it collapsed. But while they had declared the independence, they called their island the Republic of Formosa, which also included some surrounding little islands, and it went back to Japan after that attempt, and then the Republic of China overthrew the Qing dynasty in 1911 and took control of Taiwan. Then after World War II, then the Chinese Civil War caused the Republic of China to be ousted by the Chinese Communist Party, who took over mainland China, and the Republic of China folks evacuated to Taiwan. And that's essentially the way it is today, and why the People's Republic of China is anxious to get Taiwan back and reunite on the whole area under their control, and that remains a problem today. So these numerous smaller islands are pretty totally insignificant compared to Taiwan, which isn't that big an island to begin with. So just a little bit about Taiwan. Can't read that very well. I wonder if the focus can be improved. A little bit. So capital is Taipei, and actually New Taipei is there now, I understand, which is bigger than Taipei, but Taipei is still the capital. Kaohsiung where we went, is down in the. See if I can do this thing. So Kaohsiung is down here in the southern part. If you look at the map of Taiwan, the western side is where most of the population is. The eastern side is mostly somewhat mountainous. There's some good sightseeing and hiking in that area, but unfortunately we never had the time to do that. The most that we ever ventured out on was from Kaohsiung down to the very southern part of the country, where there's some beaches. So we went down there, but otherwise we pretty much stayed in Kaohsiung. So it's got a government with a president, vice president, and a premier. The president and premier shown here. Language is Mandarin. Millie comes from the southern part of China, and her family uses a Cantonese dialect, so that was pretty useless in Taiwan. So it created a lot of confusion. People would come up to her and start rattling away in Chinese, and she'd say, "I don't understand." And they'd look at her quizzically and then just rattle off in Chinese again and just ignore it and say, "I'm sorry, I don't understand." And so she was, it was more frustrating than being American or, Caucasian over there because of that confusion. It also made her concerned about going abroad or, out away from the apartment when I was at work. Her excursions were somewhat limited because she was afraid of something happening, passing out or something, which actually she sort of did at one point, and having no way of communicating with people, and people probably thought she had gone crazy or something because they wouldn't be able to understand her. Anyway, so that was a bit of a concern. Population about the size of Florida, so it's not very big, and although Florida's a big state, but the area is about the size of Maryland, and the currency was the new Taiwan dollar and NTs, and the exchange rate now is about 30 to 1 NTs to US dollar. Can't remember exactly what it was back then. Do you remember what it was when you were there, Bill? About that, yeah. I think it wasn't too far from that when I was there. Okay, so Pittsburgh to Kaohsiung, we actually left from Columbus, where my parents were, and flew out of there, and left the car with them, and flew to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco to Hong Kong to Kaohsiung. That's a pictorial view about what I had previously gone to Japan, and I went from Pittsburgh to Chicago, and then to Japan via Alaska, so an arc that was more like that. So, I'm not sure why we did that, but anyway. When we got to Hong Kong, this was the view out of our hotel window. Well, the first thing we noticed was a guy riding on a bicycle carrying a big slab of meat on the back of his motorcycle to make a delivery somewhere. Looked not too hospitable. Has to be all the way out for it to advance. This was our room, nothing particularly fancy, but looks a little more dingy than it was, I think. When we got to Kaohsiung, we stayed here for the first night, the Grand Hotel of Kaohsiung. It was a pretty magnificent looking place, and generally reasonable inside, but certainly ornate outside. The thing that was most noticeable about it was the stench in the air. Our first exposure to the open sewerage that was in Taiwan. So just really stank, but there's Millie there. On our trip there from Hong Kong, it was a little China Air flight, and the refreshments were a bowl or some rice and a beer. That's that was all they offered. So this is the entryway into the hotel. This was our room. Little balcony out there, and so very nice and for Taiwan circumstances, it was a really, really nice place. And from there, we went on to our apartment building. It was in a complex. It was a walled complex, but there was no security at the entrance, so it wasn't like it was secure from that standpoint. This is the entrance to the complex from the road. This is looking back on the entrance from inside, and these were essentially single-family dwellings inside the complex, and there was the one apartment building that we were in. We occupied the first and second floor of our unit. So you can see the units down there. We had a garage door, one of those metal garage doors, and one of the red person doors. So this was our entranceway. So you could park your car in there if you wanted to. There was one car that I shared with another guy from our company who was over there, Joe Brown, and he generally hung on to the car. I mean, I was just a snotty-nosed kid, barely out of college, so I was still 31 at the time, and he was an older guy. But anyway, he took care of the car, so we didn't have to use that. This is looking out from inside with the door closed, so this is what we usually would see when we were in there. We kept the garage door closed whenever we were inside. This is the inside, which nice high ceilings. The floors were all tile, which is easier to keep clean, but it was a decent place to have lived. It wasn't in the best condition in all places, but it served us pretty well. The only hitch was that Millie had to spend most of her time here, and I think it just about drove her crazy after 4 months. She was really ready to get out of there. I was too, but I think not as much as she was. This is looking at it from the other view, the kitchen in the background there, and you can see the curtains out onto a little patio out back. This is the kitchen. You can see the water bottle there in the bottom left. So we would get one of these water bottles delivered, I can't remember, once every week or a couple weeks or something like that, and replace it in there. And anything we wanted drinking or cooking water for, it's pivoted in the middle, so you just tip the whole thing over and pour it into whatever vessel you have. This is out in the in the little patio. You can see the sewer down there. It's an open sewer, so just the waste from people in the apartment building traversed that little culvert, and so you go out there and it stinks. So keep the door closed, and unfortunately the laundry suffers from proximity. There's me doing dishes. Some of these photos are not in the best focus. So we made our own little checkers board on a folder, and use quarters and Taiwanese coins for our pieces. Millie would typically beat me until she told me what her strategy was, and then she never won again. She blames me for that ever since. This was the girlfriend of Joe Brown. Field service people typically ended up with girlfriends pretty much everywhere they went. So his girlfriend was a nice Taiwanese girl named Nancy, and she had a relative or something who was getting married, and so she got us an invitation. We didn't go to it, but it was more to show us the process. We got the invite, and then part of the invitation is getting this little bean cake, and it's kind of an interesting part of the culture. There's Millie cooking dinner. Some of the vegetables were particularly notable. Carrots over there were like for Jack and the Beanstalk's giant or something. They were humongous and really, really fat. One carrot would like serve a family of 6 for a couple of meals. It was amazing. So this is the stairway upstairs. This was our bedroom. The apartment had been occupied before us by the person who had been there from my company and had just left. He was like 6'7" or something like that, a really big guy, and he liked hard beds. And so he had procured the mattress. This was the hardest mattress I've ever been on. And Millie was pregnant at the time, so we ended up getting a whole slew of pillows, and we had a nightly routine of tucking pillows under her in different positions, trying to get her some sort of comfort, which was only partially accomplished in the process. But it was a terrible bed. And also the air conditioner, it was pretty hot there. The air conditioner was essential, and it was the noisiest air conditioner I think I've ever experienced. So it took a while to sort of get used to getting any sort of sleep in that place. Also, the insects were pretty bad, so they sold these insect coils. You light them, and they sort of burn and send off some kind of fume, so we had those burning all the time. What's that? Yeah, you could sort of get rid of them, but anytime you open the door, they come in, and so they'd sort of be in there, and they were big and vicious. So just some of our pets. This was climbing up a wall. It looks like the floor maybe, but he's going up the wall. Didn't see too many of those, but they were there. This was some of the other wildlife. This was Millie's office. The wall had some water damage, but she had bailed out on her job. She was in the School of Nursing with West Penn before we came here, and one of the big mistakes of our career was she quit, and rather than taking like a year's leave, and she eventually went back after a little longer than a year. But if we'd have made do and just had her go back, then that would have been better, because she ended up having to start all over again with seniority and everything. And so anyway, she had just left, and she needed to put down the notes, transcribe the notes that she had for whoever was taking her position. And so a lot of her time was spent laboriously going through those notes. If anybody's done that sort of thing, you know what a pain in the neck it is. So that was a worry for her most of the time that we were there. This is over the wall of the compound, just some of the surrounding areas. You can see some kind of a temple thing up on the hillside. This was Millie working away at her desk. This was our backyard. It's not really ours, it's the general apartments. We never went back there. Wasn't really very hospitable. So that's enough for the apartment. Now we'll take you on a little journey around Kaohsiung. This is what you see as soon as you go out of the apartment. That's the open sewerage, so just stink. It's terrible. This was Mr. Chen's grocery store. Excuse me, grocery store, right in there where that guy is coming out of. That's where we got our food, most of it. They made deliveries. They weren't too far from us, so Millie would go there regularly and arrange for food deliveries. When Millie would go out and travel, if it was some place that she couldn't walk to, she'd get a taxi, and they gave her my company gave her a business card that basically just says who she is and had the address of the apartment, so she could go, and she would have places like this or other places listed on a piece of paper, and so she'd get in the taxi and point to it, and the guy would know where to go, and she could use the card to get back home. So that was the way we managed, with us, myself and Joe, having the car at the workplace. Then this is just a typical temple you'd see along the side of the road. There are numerous ones here and there. This was some school or something, and some of the ornamental entryway statuary. This is some other relic of some sort up on the. A number of these graveyards. You can see their quality. The picture isn't that good, but you can see sort of what it looks like. And this is some more of it. So one of the things that kept me amused while I was over there, I joined a group of the Brits in particular started this organization, Hash House Harriers. Harriers being dogs that hunt hares, rabbits. And so the way it works, a drinking club with a running problem. I thought that was kind of cute. The way it works is you have a bunch of people, and it's basically running, and you might, I don't know, run 7 or 8 miles or something during the course of it. And one person would be the hare, and the rest are the hounds. And the hare gets, I don't know, a 5-minute head start and has a handful of ribbons. And if they're going to make a left-hand turn, they attach a blue ribbon to a bush or something. And if they're going to make a right-hand turn, they put a red ribbon on a bush or somewhere. And so the hounds go, and you're constantly looking for these ribbons. And if the pack is still together, if one person sees the ribbons, everybody heads off. But pretty soon the pack sort of gets a little spread out, and so you're sort of on your own, and you go anywhere. I mean, we go through these graveyards and people's neighborhoods and things like that. So it was an interesting way to sort of get a closer look at the neighborhoods and everything. But anyway, and then. Whoever was the hare had also the responsibility of arranging the end point where they were going to be going to, and arranging for refreshments to be there at the end. So it was good fun, and it's around the world, different places, primarily because of the British British Empire. Wherever the Brits were, you probably run into a branch of this organization. So every Wednesday we had the car for the evening, and we could arrange with Joe other times too when we needed it. But Wednesday was our day that we could rely on, and every Wednesday we went out to dinner. And there were 2 hotel restaurants that we would go to: the Kingdom Hotel, which is here, or the Ambassador Hotel. And so we got to know some of the waitresses at the different places. The waitresses at this place was the one who I asked for a tip on some local music that she enjoyed, which is what this tape was that I was playing when you guys came in. Some pop Taiwanese music. Now, when people came to work here for a very short time, didn't warrant an apartment, they would stay at the Kingdom or the other place, but usually the Kingdom. And one of the stories I remember was a guy was saying that he had been on the phone calling home, and you didn't do that much back in '82. You'll remember it cost a lot of money to make long distance calls, so you didn't do it any more than you had to. But he was on the phone, and he was sort of complaining about the country and some of the obstacles he had encountered, and the phone was cut off in the middle. So it was one of these deals where you placed the call through the operator, the hotel operator, so they were listening. And heard other tales of a similar nature that indicated, you couldn't assume that you were alone at any time, or being unobserved. This was the Ambassador Hotel. This is a more recent picture, actually. It didn't quite look like this when we were there, but something close. But they were both very nice restaurants, so that was always enjoyable and something to look forward to. This was Millie in the car at some point. I can't remember what the occasion was. This was the President Department Store, it was called. Notable because it had an amusement park on the roof. You can sort of see some of the stuff up there, indications of it. So kind of curious. Okay, so one of the things we amused ourselves with was looking at riders on motorcycles and counting how many people they could stick on a motorcycle. This was 1. That wasn't particularly notable. Here was a 2. That that wasn't particularly notable either. 3 was quite common. This was a 4. You see the kids squished in here. Here's another 4. Just taking the kids to school. Here's another 4. So they weren't at all uncommon. Here was a 5. And these little Vespa things were pretty common over there. Here's another 5. You can sort of see the kids squished in between mother and dad, and then a couple in front of dad. This is my favorite one. This is another 5, but that woman's expression is priceless to me. Not quite sure what she was thinking, but it was nothing good. Anyway, I don't have pictures of the 6s that we saw occasionally, nor of the 7 that we saw once. But so they get up as high as that, though. It's pretty unbelievable. So then the other thing of interest, another thing, was the stuff that they would carry on their bikes and motorcycles. So this one's not too remarkable, nor is this, carrying a guy and his wife going to labor somewhere or other. This doesn't really qualify too much, but walking your dog, the leash is attached to the handle on the back. This is pretty notable. Driving around, it's like driving with a bomb on your car. There's acetylene or compressed air or whatever the heck they are. And you can't quite see very well, but this guy is carrying chickens in a cage there. This one you can see a little better, although it's a fuzzy picture, but you can see the chickens in the cage back there. This guy is carrying that load. You'd almost think this is a load in that store behind him, but it's on the back of his motorcycle. Couple of, I don't know, what are those, Millie? Watermelons or not? No, they're some kind of squash or something. This is my favorite. These bird cages. You can see the birds in the cages. All on the back of that motorcycle. These I think are watermelons. Just well, maybe not. No, they look more like big lettuces or something. I don't know, but looking like they're just ready to roll out the nearest bump. Taiwan was Kaohsiung anyway was one of their big industries was tearing down old ships. So if you had a ship that needed to be taken apart, they would cut it apart with torches and take the metal to the steel mill and have it melted down or whatever. So this is a ship part on the back of the truck, and the loads that they would carry are just unbelievable. This one's even better. So you can imagine driving past something like that, giving it wide berth. But you'd see them, like often the tires were squishy and the thing would be bouncing up and down, and people are riding by in their motorcycles or whatever. Lumber was another thing, and these logs are going as far back as it looks, and often the front wheels, the steering wheels of the truck were barely making contact. You could see it sort of pivoting on the back wheels, and the front wheels. Sometimes you'd actually see them leave the ground on a bump. There's another good one. This truck pulling this boat through the streets. This was my favorite, though. I mean, that is so contrary to any safety regulation we would have in the States. I mean, you'd lose that rope, and the whole thing could just roll down off the truck. So then some more of just some of the other things you see on the road. These curious trucks, 3-wheel trucks. Well, actually 5 wheels, but 4 in the back and 1 in the front. This guy, you'd never see this in the States, driving a forklift truck down the road with his. First of all, you typically would drive these backwards because in a forklift truck, it's the back wheels that steer, and so that you can angle into things. So typically when they're out on the road, they drive them backwards so that you get the steering wheels in the front. It's a little less stable to do it this way, and then having your forks down like that, or of course up has problems too. But anyways. Another amazing thing, I don't have any pictures of it, was when they would have construction. You'd be driving along a major road often, and if they have construction, there is no warning, no cones, no anything. They just suddenly have a hole in the road, and you had to keep your eye out and know to go around it or whatever. And often they wouldn't. They'd expect you to go into the oncoming traffic lane, and you just do what you have to make that work. It's pretty amazing. Can't really see this too well, but that's a line of motorcycles waiting to pump up. Not a crazy idea, but you don't see that kind of thing over here. There's just not the volume of. So you may notice you can see in this lane back here the arrows pointing that way. This guy is going the wrong way. And our car is just driving and having to, just pull over, let him go, and it's just par for the course. You go down roads and people are doing crazy things, and it's just, I need to do it. I need to get there, so I'll just go down this road. We were on a road that had maybe 3 or 4 lanes in each direction. So they had really wide roads, and there was a school bus that was in the left-hand lane. It was at a traffic light, and when the light was turning, it jumped the light just a little bit in order to make a right-hand turn in front of 2 other lanes of traffic to make that turn because he suddenly found himself in the wrong lane or something. Just unbelievable. Unfortunately, I didn't get a picture of that one. This was a cement mixer. You saw a lot of these things. This is a smaller one, just one guy. This one's a larger one. You can see there's room for a passenger in the back seat. and like at the steel mill that I was at, a lot of the facility was being built. And before I was there, they had built a facility where the foundations were all done by hand. They had, many people, women and men, who carried the containers of cement, liquid, cement, all the way to the foundation and dump them into the whole foundation was done by hand like that. So this is advanced technology to some degree. This is just showing the traffic light. You have all these motorbikes and motor scooters, a separate lane just for them. They were all over the place, and a lot of roads they were in the road. This is a truck carrying chickens. This is just an intersection. A lot of bikes with passengers. This was notable for the crossing of all the motorbikes and scooters, but also just to give you a feeling for a roundabout that has 4 lanes of traffic going around the roundabout. We're starting to get roundabouts back in, or not back, I guess, in the United States. You're seeing more of them, and at the senior drivers course that Millie and I just took this a couple days ago to get our discount on insurance, they were talking about the protocol for roundabouts and everything, and it's like a challenge to figure out how to navigate just a basic roundabout for some people, but a four lane roundabout is gotta have your wits about you. I'm not really sure why I had this picture in there. This was a parking lot for motorbikes. So this is a typical sort of non-main city street, and and there'd be motorcycles all over the place. When you drive, you just drive, and people will sometimes move aside for you, and you just sort of make your way through and deal with traffic coming into your lane or whatever. It's kind of a free for all, and it's sort of amazing that more accidents don't happen, but people do sort of watch out when they're in a situation where they have to. So it works somehow. So you can't really see too well, but this is a convoy of logs, part of the logging trade. They're all just somehow attached to each other and just floating down the river. Pretty amazing. Some of the bridges have nets to catch the garbage that floats in the river. There had been a storm at some point, so some of these boats you can see were sort of tossed around and just sitting there in the river. I assume at some point somebody would take care of them. This is just sort of showing the size of some of the roads. I mean, four lanes in each direction, plus a service lane on the side with another parking lane. You know, so it's like 12 lanes all told going across the road. So another thing driving around are the stores, the different places that you can buy things. A lot of these roadside vendors selling pretty much everything, fruit and whatever. You can get your acupuncture if you want. Wedding dresses. You can get all the latest baby equipment. I'm not sure what exactly this was, a rocking chair with wheels. I couldn't quite figure that one out. Another thing that was big over there were homing pigeons. You'd see a lot. I believe that would be what this is, but you see a lot of them. These little huts on the roofs of houses, and I'm not sure exactly what the homing pigeon industry was all about, but it was more than just sport. They were using it in some fashion, but and just stores with who knows what. Now, if you're a native, you knew where to go to get things. Millie, on occasion, would go out with Nancy, the girlfriend of Joe Brown, and she knew all. She was a native, so she knew all the places to shop and everything. So Millie got a little bit more of a look into that kind of thing than I did. I'm not sure exactly what the heck these people were doing, but they have all these little kilns here that they're cooking something or charcoal or something. I don't know what it is. This is an example of their construction techniques. This is scaffolding, bamboo, multi-story bamboo scaffold, just strapped to each other in some fashion or other and covered with some kind of matting for protection from the elements. But I mean, unbelievable the height that this bamboo scaffolding would go to. This is another example of this homing pigeon thing. So you see a couple guys up there waiting for their birds to come home, I guess, something. Kind of a pretty vista, and here's another homing pigeon roost. This is just by the side of the road, a grave. I don't know what the story would be behind it, but yeah, you never knew what you were gonna encounter along the road. There's the Grand Hotel that we were at the first night, and it overlooks a park called Chengqing Lake. But Bill, when you were there, were you in Kaohsiung or in Taipei or Taipei? Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so it's a nice park, lot a very pleasant place to wander around and spend some time. Nice vista. You can see this this zigzag walkway across the lake. It's kind of fairly peaceful atmosphere, so it was a nice place to go. This was Joe Brown, the guy I shared with the car with. This is a pagoda. You saw these sort of in many places around. This one, steps to go up, and you can climb up the pagoda. So I did. It's one of my things. I like finding places I can climb up. So castles and cathedrals are the main things I like to go for, but pagodas will do. Millie wasn't so thrilled. She, So a double helical stairway up the pagoda. Millie's a little more thrilled to be not up there, I think, waving hello. This was another pagoda. I didn't get a better picture of it other than this seemed artistic at the time. Pretty sunset. So another thing was rice. This was a rice field, and they would harvest the rice and take it in these bags and put it on the road. They'd dump it on the road, spread it out, let it dry in the sun or something. Millie points out this is why you wash your rice. Just have these tools here for spreading it out. And they just take over parts of the road. You have to drive around it. It's the parking lot of the Grand Hotel. I don't have it with all the rice there, but they took over the parking lot and just had it spread out. I stopped and got my picture taken with one of the women that were there. They were very amused. And then when they're done harvesting it in the fields, they burn the fields. So you smell that in the air often. You can see the smoke in the background. These were onions. Can't really see. They look like rocks, but you see these fields full of these onions. It's waiting to be collected, I guess. So we traveled to the beach. We didn't go in the ocean like the arrow, but rather followed the path down there. These were some sort of curious raft things. That's what these things are out here in the water. Put tubes together, strap them together, and somehow make them usable as boats, rafts. The sand was nice. It was a nice beach. I don't know if any of you been to England, but half the beaches in England, they call them beaches, but it's like various degrees of pebbles or stones. The most uncomfortable beaches you can imagine, and but these were legitimate beaches here. Except you did see some unusual things. Herd of goats going on up the trail there. This was a group that we had gone with. Taking a little sun break there. One of the guys that I think he was in the apartment complex that we were in, but he was in Kaohsiung working on an oil rig. They made oil rigs. They would make them there and then float them out to sea wherever they needed to go. So he gave us a tour of the oil rig. So this is an oil rig being manufactured. So the big gears for raising and lowering the feet of the oil rig down to these are obviously floating oil rigs we're talking about. Lowering the feet down to the base of the ocean or wherever it is. So all the pipes that end up traveling with the oil rig. This is a device that rotates and sort of pushes the pipe down as the drill goes down in the hole. So just various different parts of the oil rig. Can even make an oil rig picturesque, sort of. And maybe we'll take a break before I talk about work. That's probably the most boring part of it for you guys. It's exciting for me because I enjoy steel mills, but we'll take a break now and have some refreshments. Okay, so as much as I would enjoy giving you a primer on steel mills and steel plants, I don't want to bore you too much, so I won't do that. But suffice it to say that typically steel plants are divided into sections. There's well, typically a coke section is associated with steel production. Bruce Earhart was heavily into that part of the business. The coke is used for blast furnaces. It's a more concentrated form of fuel than coal. The impurities burned out of the coal. And the blast furnace produces iron, and the iron goes to the basic oxygen, the BOP shop, for converting it into steel. And then it's poured and molded into slabs that are typically end up being 8 inches thick or so, and that gets sent to a hot mill. So that whole thing is the hot end, where molten steel and that kind of thing exists. The finishing end takes the coils out of the hot mill and pickles them, puts them through a pickling tank to get the scale off of them, then sends it to the cold mill where it's reduced to close to finished thickness, and then it gets annealed to soften the steel, and then it gets tempered in a temper mill to harden it again. So a 5-stand cold mill is what's used to do most of the reduction of the cold steel, and a 2-stand, 1 or 2-stand mill, temper mill, is usually what's used after the annealing process. So we were putting in a 5-stand mill and a 2-stand mill here in China Steel. So this is the 2-stand mill. You can see the roll stack over here. You have typically in most cold and hot mills, you have four rolls, 2 big backup rolls and then 2 smaller rolls in the middle. The smaller rolls are what the steel passes between, and the backup rolls help keep the smaller rolls flat. And this one has the rolls are out of it. It has this is the motor back here, and the spindle comes out. You can roll the work rolls right in there, and they fit into these these couplings, and these couplings have flat surfaces, so they can drive them, and you don't have to do anything more than just roll the work rolls in there. So anyway, this is a 2-stand cold mill. These are the quick work roll change rigs that roll the roll stack. These are the 2 work rolls sitting on top of each other. It rolls it into the mill, and So on a job like this, typically the mill builder like Wien United builds the actual equipment. We have shops to machine the parts and put them all together, and then you hire somebody like Westinghouse or General Electric to provide the electrics to the motors and the drive control and everything. And the reason that a company like Wien United has an electrical department where I was working is to provide the coordination. So the electric company pretty much knows what needs to be done. They've done it plenty of times before, but they need somebody to liaise with the mechanical people to make sure that they're providing exactly what our mechanical equipment needs. So that's the role that I had, is just interfacing between the mechanical people and the electrical supplier. So on this job, it was Westinghouse that was providing all the electrical equipment. So you can see on the back of the mill, these are the motors, big, huge motors, 20,000 horsepower or something like that. And you can walk up on top of the mill, a lot of equipment up there. This is a walking beam conveyor. You have a coil sitting on each of these pads, and this beam comes out and lowered down, and it raises up, lifts all simultaneously, all the coils that are sitting on all these pads up here simultaneously, and shifts them one position, then goes down again, comes back and does it again. This is a belt wrapper. The coil comes out of after it's coiled up here, the little car brings it over. A band shoots up around here, and to get it around the coil, it's connected to the other end and then tightened around the coil. It pulls out of the groove here to come down and wrap around the coil, and then they cut it off, and you got a banded coil. This just shows you sort of how much is below the surface, like an iceberg. Yeah. You see a little bit on top, but there's a whole bunch of equipment down below. This is a different kind of, it's a coil car that lifts up the coil and then traverses it to the next position and then goes back and does the same again. So this is the tension reel, the wind-up reel. There's a couple of backup rolls sitting on the floor. This is the 5-stand mill. So each stand has a control here, mostly not for the operation of the mill, but for changing rolls and doing all the things to get things in the right position and mode for operating. And then the operations are done from these are quick roll change rigs. The operations are controlled by somebody up in this pulpit here who runs the mill, and it's all in a coordinated fashion. So it's done remotely. This is the top of the mill. You can see all the equipment up there, and there's a coil field associated with it where the coils are stored. They come off of one facility, get stored, and then pulled into this mill to run it, and then when it's done processing, they put it back in the coil field again. So this is still, the mill is still being commissioned, so the coil field's not full, just the coils that are used for testing and everything. These are the backup rolls without the chucks on them. The chucks have the bearings in them and have to get stuck on the ends to complete the whole assembly. These are chucks for the work rolls, the smaller work rolls. These are backup rolls that are in the chucks. This is a cobble. When something goes wrong, you end up with a mess that has to be cleaned up. Often you can clean it up just by getting it on the reel and pulling it out, but often you have to get in and cut it out. This is another kind of cobble that got messed up while it was being coiled up. Yeah. So these are always the exciting part of a day when something like this happens. You don't want it to happen, but it can be pretty spectacular, and it makes a heck of a lot of noise when it happens. There's me hard at work. And this was a Slag Pit. This is one of the guys that was there for work, and this is the car that we had, Joe Brown back here. Slag Pit is for the hot end, where after you have the iron that's still molten, and it's poured into a ladle, and the top is scarfed off. It's the waste product that rises to the surface of the molten ladle, and you take that off, and then you get rid of it. And like, for instance, it ends up in slag piles, like on the outside of the Squirrel Hill Tunnel, that new housing development there. That's all built on a slag pile. So the slag gets broken up so that it's often used as a roadbed also, broken up into smaller pieces, and then you can build on it. But so this is a ladle of mostly just the slag that was taken off the top of a molten iron ladle. It's still molten also itself. Sometimes it's transported in a rail car, so it's a rail car pushing a ladle of slag to be dumped. And then I've got a quick sequence here of the dumping process, which is kind of spectacular to watch. And this is some of the guys letting off steam. And so we were there 4 months, and the way you get the visa that you have is only good for 2 months, and the way you get it renewed is by leaving the country and coming back. There's nothing that you have to do other than just leave the country and come back. So the way people usually did it was to go to Hong Kong for the weekend, and after 2 months in Taiwan, there are a lot worse places to be, for sure. But after 2 months of that hard bed and the air conditioning blasting in our ears and lunch, I ate at the plant every day, and pretty much every day, with fairly rare exceptions. The lunch was fried rice with scrambled eggs sort of mixed into it. It actually was pretty decent, but to have it every day, it got pretty old. So just a lot of reasons why we were really ready to go to Hong Kong when we had our 2-month break. And we went and stayed at a place called the Regent Hotel. I don't know if it's associated with Regency or any of the other chains, but it was a really nice hotel. It had like a really good restaurant, for instance, and I didn't take a suit with me for some reason, and I needed a suit to eat there. I went down, the woman took a look at me, walked into a closet and selected a suit, jacket and tie that were a perfect fit. She'd done that before, and so they were all ready for people like me. And it was like a 7-course meal, and it was one of these meals where the next course would suddenly appear in front of you, and you hardly knew that there were waiters. It was just an amazing experience. The food was awesome. So it was just a marvelous time, a little island of respite in the middle of not too bad a 4-month period, but bad enough so that this was really awesome. So anyway, we went to Hong Kong. This is the view down at the entrance of the Regency Hotel. This was the so it was right on the water. The restaurant down below. We took a ferry from the island, the mainland, to one of the other islands. There was a funicular railroad there, sort of like the one that goes up Mount Washington, and that's one of these railroads that has a car going up and down that balance against each other, and at some point they pass in the middle, but when they're not passing, they have they use part of the same rails. So this is going up, and this is a place where you're passing the other car. The view is pretty amazing up there. Getting up near the top, and the Hong Kong harbor. pretty amazing city. It's such a shame to see what's happened with it. The Brits giving up control of it and moving on. You can see over here there's a rotating restaurant here. That's where Millie and I went after we finished here, and so we took the cable car, the funicular railroad down the hill, and we walked to the restaurant. We were going to take a bus, but the timing wasn't right, so we figured, well, we'll just walk, and so it was a fair distance to walk. And by the time we got to the hotel, Millie was, of course, she was pretty pregnant at that time. She was noticing she hadn't felt Katie. We called it Murphy at the time because we didn't know what gender it was or anything, and so that was our name. So Murphy wasn't moving at the time, and she was getting a little worried. And when we got in the elevator, she took the time to open up enough to take a look, and her around her navel was like bruised or something, and we were really worried what's wrong here. And so it sort of took the edge off of the enjoyment of the dinner for a while, but then partway through dinner she started feeling the baby kicking again, and so we figured maybe it was okay, and it turned out to be nothing. There was one time when we were in Taiwan, we went out to a nightclub with some of the other guys and their wives or whoever, and it was we were right by the speaker, and it was like super loud, and remember the baby like kicking up a storm with objecting to all the noise that was going on there. That was the same evening that we went to a bar afterwards, and there were some ladies of the night sort of lining up, waiting for sailors or something or other, and one of them looked up at me as I went by, and Millie's right with me. Of course, as far as she knew, Millie might have just been another local that I'd picked up or something, and she says, "Hi, how you?" And Millie's saying, "I'll tell you how he is," Millie enjoying the view, and the railway track down. Pretty splendid scenery. So this is so our room looked right out on the bay. So you look down and you don't see building or anything. You just see right down to the water. The bed was facing the huge picture window that took up the whole wall. So you could lie in bed with the windows open, and you're just looking out at this vista here, and just watching the traffic go by. You can see a Chinese junk over there in the over here. There's another shot of a junk going by. Pretty high up. Then a night shot. Just lying in bed, lights out in the room, just looking out at this vista. It was, and then taking a break. So that was at the 2-month mark, and then we went back, and it was more of the same, and then we hit the Regency again on our way out of town, out of Taiwan, back into Hong Kong, and flew out of Hong Kong. We ended up stopping in Hawaii, spending a couple of days there, and Millie and I had both been to Hawaii previously, independently, before we met each other. So that's our path back. We stopped, just changed planes in LA on the way back. This was where I forget exactly where it was that we cleared customs. It must have been in Hawaii, I guess. And one of the other passengers coming in from Asia had like an industrial-sized can of must have been L.A. It was a can of pineapple, so it must have been coming back from Hawaii, and going through immigration or whatever in L.A. The immigration asked them what was in there. It was pineapple. They pull out this, attached to the counter, they have this big industrial can opener, and open this big can of pineapple to make sure that they weren't smuggling anything. And they were sitting there, what are we going to do with this can of pineapple now? It's open. They ended up throwing it out. I mean, what can you do with it? I think the total trip is something. It was something like between 20 and 24 hours or something like that. The whole it's a 12-hour difference between here and Taiwan, so it's a half a day difference. View from Hawaii. Hawaii was wonderful, and I took that opportunity to shave my beard off. So Millie had never seen me without a beard. I had my beard when we met, and this was like having known me for a couple of years at that point, and so she felt like she had walked off with a young sailor or something, because I lost a number of years in appearance without the beard. Both of us always looked fairly young for our age, so each of our friends thought we had married somebody considerably younger. This was a banyan tree. How many people have been to Hawaii? And these banyan trees are unbelievable. Waikiki Beach over in the distance. I can't remember what the name of that hotel was, but the pink one, yeah. Pink Hotel. What is it? Anyway, this was Hanamao Bay, I don't know how you pronounce it. But anyway, when I was there previously, I'd gone snorkeling down there. We didn't do that this time around. We rented a car and went around the island. I think that was the time that we attended one of those things where they try to talk you into buying a timeshare, and in exchange they'll let you rent a car, or they'll give you a rental car for the day. That was an expensive rental car. We swore we'd never go that route again. You know, investing that kind of time, wasting time, ridiculous high pressure sales things. Anyway, we got a car. What's that? No. We were successful in resisting, but so we just drove around the island. So then around 1990, after I had left Wing United and was working for U.S. Steel, I was part of a team that went around the world looking at plate mills. The plate mill in Gary, Indiana, we were revamping. So we went around looking at plate mills around the world, and we went we saw some in Japan, and went back to China Steel, looking at their plate mill this time. And so I was able to go there again. Millie unfortunately wasn't with us, but anyway, so the Asia part of the trip, I just had some slides, a familiar slide of Hong Kong, and me, one of the other guys, and this was actually in. These are a little out of order, I guess. This is the Ambassador Hotel again in Kaohsiung. This was it's some kind of it's not a tapestry, it's some kind of woven picture. I don't know if you can see I don't know what you would call it, but it's a pretty impressive picture of the Great Wall. Thought it was worth taking a picture of. We had a night in Japan we went. They have a hot spring here, and we had dinner with them. So we had the opportunity to watch an accomplished ninja work with one of our group. Not really. It was a geisha girl, or I don't know exactly what she was, but. That was a group of us. We were all dressed up for the hot spring, and here we are enjoying the hot water. This was my hotel room. Had its own little eating area there on an elevated floor. And And I obligingly put on one of their robes and set up the camera to take a selfie. So, sayonara, I label this one. So that's the end.